All right, man. Thank you very much for watching. This is the FreeRide podcast, another episode. Vandaag, I'm so excited to have this lady in the show because, hey, also Abu man. Hey, also Upizi. She is so beautiful. She's an amazing character, an amazing entrepreneur. She's a politician. She's very outspoken. Ke Phapano Phasha. I'm so excited to have you, sister.
No, thank you so much. I'm also excited.
Oh, man, I'm so glad you made it.
I'm happy as well to be here and to speak to your viewers and speak to you as well.
No, awesome. You always like shock me by the things you say, but I don't want to talk about them now. I saw the one poster. You posted a picture of you when you were still young, and you were talking about the struggles you've gone through. Like, so what's Phapano Gima?
Well, I'm still learning, interestingly.
Yeah.
But I think I'm just a creature of nature. My identity, unfortunately, amazes me as well.
Yeah.
In terms of my growth, in terms of my personality, in terms of where I come from.
Yeah.
Because I was born and bred in Dobsonville, Soweto.
Huh.
Yes.
Kotobzi.
Yes, Kaslamakasi.
Oh, no way.
Yes.
Kokaya Kotobs.
Kolos Mechir.
Kolos Mechir, no way.
Yes. So I was born in Dobsonville.
Yeah.
And I was raised by my father. My parents divorced when I was fairly young. In fact, it was 5 of us. So I've got 5 siblings from my mother and father. And then my mom has another child, who's the eldest. So I was raised by my dad, but my father loved women, man. Yes, and he married 4 times. And as and when he married, I would travel based on who he is getting married to. And whether they were interested in us or they were not interested in us. So I fairly had... it was not a traumatic, it was an interesting childhood.
Yeah.
And I really took care of myself. Yeah. And I think what really helped as I was growing up, and maybe when I was fairly young, is that for some odd reason, I just started picking up magazines from the street. So I started loving to read. Yeah. And then I started going to the library, and I had this different interpretation of society and reality because I started reading Reader's Digest.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yeah.
Yes,
informative,
and I also read American magazines, The Economist, and so forth. And it was a long time ago, so that's when I started picking up about international issues or global issues.
Yeah.
And as and when I would go to the library, I would gather books.
Yeah.
And as I gathered books, that became my sanctuary. So my life was centered around the magazines, the articles that I would read, the poems that I would read. And I just had a different perception of reality to my surrounding. And I think that really helped me and shaped me because where I really came from, there was no opportunity of being anything else but your environment, the West, in fact.
Yeah.
Yes. So I was the first one from my family, from my entire father's family to graduate. So for me, I'm proud of myself. That's why I don't have any hero but myself.
Yeah.
Because, I had no one else but myself. And I really had no one else to look up to but myself.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. But so from the magazines and stuff, was there any people that you looked up to or not really? Not at all. Like there's no woman, no Oprah, no woman in politics, Mama Winnie, that you said, no man?
Not necessarily. Interestingly, it was my elder sisters because also when I was growing up, my grandmother's household was highly political.
Okay.
So my older sisters, who at the time were perhaps around, they were teenagers and they were still in high school and I was still young. So I could see them running from the police and so on.
Yeah.
And they were arrested. So those are the people that I looked up to. But as I grew older, both my sisters, in fact, who are older than me, they didn't finish matric.
Okay.
One was in Azapo. I'm not sure what was it called then, but the student movement was of Azapo.
Okay.
The other one was part of SASO, COSAS. So they used to clash a lot because my older sister, who was a member of Azapo, she believed in peace, reading. They would read, and the other one, who was a member of COSAS and by default the ANC, they would fight and they would take a uniform. So those are the people that I looked up to because those are the people who nurtured me. Those are the people who took care of me in the absence of proper parenting. Yes, so those are my heroes. Unfortunately, I don't have heroes from the US, but I have immediate heroes who are that I saw every day, who struggled with me, who shared whatever they had with me. So those are my heroes, my immediate family, my two sisters and my older brother.
And then Skolo, where did you go to school?
Okay, so I went to a primary school, which I am in love with. It's called Dr. Mary Malahlela Primary School. It's in Dobsonville. The reason why I'm passionate about this school is that it's named after the first female black doctor in the country.
What?
Yes. And one of the things that I've been trying to do and engaging the councillor there is that we need to ensure that the school is declared as a heritage site. Because Kamo police station.
Oh, Kamo police station.
Yeah, as in fact, it's the last street before Meadowlands.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Not Sinyamo. Next.
No, Sinyamo. It's opposite Sinyamo.
Oh, opposite.
Samapate.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Yes. So.
Yes, I know that school.
Dr. Mary. Interestingly, she was born in Limpopo. However, her parents came with her when she was still young. So she studied in Rodiport. What we call Rodiport today. Yeah. It was called Kwajoli. There was a plot where people were staying there from different backgrounds. It was called Kwajoliwe. So around 1968, 1969 or so in the 60s, the people who used to stay in that plot, including Dr. Mary Malahlela and their parents, were evicted to Dobsonville.
Yes.
So that time, and I think even prior to that...
My grandfather was part of them, yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So prior to that, Dr. Mary was already in varsity. So she went to vet. She was the only female black student amongst male students, in particular white students. Yes. So
history again.
There's a lot of history. And for me, it's important because I feel that with the dawning of democracy, we have celebrated politicians. Yeah. But we've got people who were part of the struggle, who were not necessarily in politics. They were in politics by default, whom we did not acknowledge, but they played such an instrumental part in the liberation of our country. And Dr. Mira was one of them because after she graduated, she eventually had a surgery in Cape Town. And through her surgery, she took care of, young people, liberation activists and so forth. But we do not celebrate her the way I think she ought to be celebrated. Yeah. So I went to that school, Dr. Mira Malahlela. In fact, she's got is it called a posthumous? She's got presidency awarded her.
Oh.
Yes. Siaparankwe. Yes,
yeah.
It's Thailand. So they've given her that. But in terms of her movements, the school is dilapidated. If you look at, I went to her house where she used to stay, her first house. It's been sold. But I've done a lot of history because I think also with someone like Dr. Mira, if you look at a typical black child today, their hero or their heroine is Zodwa Wabantu. And I with no disrespect to Zodwa Wabantu, and it's your Kanyimbawu. But what about girl children who want to be professionals? Girl children who are in maths and science. They don't know that they're icons like Dr. Mira Malahlela, who did medicine and mathematics because she's a scientist when it was not fashionable.
In the most difficult times.
In the most difficult times. So for me, I think these are women that we should be honoring because...
it's true.
Yes, because also when I was growing up, I grew up at a time, 1994, 95, I was watching Generation. And when I was watching Generation and other shows which were on TV, they were mainly about reconciliation and building this rainbow nation. And when I look at myself now, how I look it's, for me, a demonstration. I'm a product of that dysfunctional system, and I'm not making an excuse.
Sure.
Yes, that who we are as a people has not, that information has not been generated in terms of identity. Yes, so fortunately I went to Dr. Mary, then I traveled a lot. I went to the school, Kagiso.
Umuva because of Papa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I went to this other school called Kagiso called Stolamati. I loved the school. They were disciplinarians, but it was a beautiful school. Then after that, we had to move again. I moved to Northwest, Zirast. And then from Zirast, I moved back. I went to this other school. So I moved a lot. But then eventually I graduated. And interestingly, I passed with matric and exemption at this high school in Meadowlands. KwaMahlobo High School.
Oh, KwaMahlobo.
God.
Yes.
I was an odd one out. Because it was a very volatile school. But
yeah, I remember Mahlobo,
yeah, but I was able to, with the disadvantages of the school, I literally let everything in. When there were prefects which were needed, I would be the prefect. There was a teacher who, I don't know, that teacher saw something in me. He's the one who decided that I must be the deputy chairperson of COSAS in the school. So that's really how I joined politics, because of that teacher. I think, I forgot the name, but that teacher is the one who actually drove me into the direction of politics. And then I passed with exemption. I was supposed to go to varsity the next year, but my father, for some reason, they didn't pay for my fees. Then I took myself to varsity when I was 24. That's how I graduated at UNISA and so forth. And then I started working at UNISA. And that was my relationship with the University of South Africa, primarily because of, family issues. But yeah, that's...
What did you study?
Well, I started with philosophy.
Philosophy?
Yes, I started with philosophy because I was always an odd one out. And interestingly, when I finished matric, I joined this organization. It was Kids for Life. I remember it was called Kids for Life. And they were walking to Durban at the time when I joined. So they were raising funds. It was led by this gentleman called Quentin Hamilton. So this NGO was walking. It was young people walking from Soweto to Durban to raise funds for children in farm schools. So because I was not doing anything, so I decided to join them. And when I joined them, because we were looking for donations and funds from various departments, we went to this department, the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture, and I met this man, Wiseman Hamilton. He was a director there. So we started talking and he recruited me to join. I didn't know that he was in politics. So with him, it was different because I then picked up that they were part of what was then called the Marxist workerist tendency of the ANC.
What?
Yes. So it was it was an organization within the ANC.
Okay.
Of what was then called Trotskyites.
Okay.
So you would have Marxist Leninists, and you would have, it's like people who leaned towards the ideas of Trotsky.
Okay.
Yes. So I met him. He recruited me to join his organization. Now it was not called MWT because they were expelled from the ANC.
Oh.
Yes. They were expelled from the ANC because they were fighting the South African Communist Party.
Okay.
At the time, they were fighting Bojo Slovo and the direction that the SACP was advising the ANC to take. Yes. So I joined them. The organization was called Democratic Socialist Movement. When we were there, we used to read every weekend. We would read about the state, Marxism, Das Kapital. So that's that's one organization where we were fed politics. Yes. Political education. Yes. And, DSM, I was there for a while, but I picked up they were very radical.
Okay.
In fact, others would say they were dogmatic because they don't compromise in terms of their ideas. When they believe that the state must be worker controlled, when they believe that even companies must be under the control of workers, because workers given their labor. That's what they believe in, and they do not change. But eventually I left, and then I was part of the ANC Youth League, and then the ANC, but I studied communication ultimately. And honestly, I'm not that much into, after having studied and where I am now, I gained more experience outside of the classroom than in the classroom.
Really?
For me, my degree and whatever else I'm studying, it's backup.
Okay.
Yes, because
To have paperwork.
yes, because I've picked up that what is so critical in life is connections.
Network.
Yes, it's network, not necessarily your qualification. It's who you know, and so, and that's what I'm trying to inculcate with my kids as well. To say, well, go to school, but honestly, get into business, because I've got two girls, so I'm like, get into business, but at the same time, go to school, but get into business so that you do not become subservient to other people. And let me introduce you to the people that I know. So when you are done here, you'll have some connections, because it's difficult. I mean, we've got so many graduates out there.
So true.
Yes.
So true.
I mean,
So true.
we've got PhD graduates, but they can't find a job.
They're unemployed.
Yes. And mainly it's because they don't even know how to be self-employed. The schooling system doesn't teach you that.
It's so interesting you raised that, because we were talking about it with another guy, Jorge. What is it that school did not teach you that you wish that school had taught you now that you're a bit older?
Well, for me, it's many things.
Okay.
It's many things. And for me, I think with school, I was advantageous because for me, school was one way of getting away from, my environment. But I didn't learn anything, to tell you the truth, except for reading and writing. But everything else I had to learn post-matric. On my own. For example, ethics. I'm just talking about basic things. Ethics, morals, finances, taxes, so social skills.
True.
So those are things that those are things that I learned outside of school, which I think are so fundamental to any human being, that you need to have these skills before you leave, all these years in, whether it's basic education and university. And that's what I'm trying to instill with my kids. I mean, my kids they just wake up to go to school, because
how old are they?
They're 15. The ones who are going to school, they're 15 and 13. So for them, they have to wake up to go to school, because I pay for their fees. But I've tried my best to inculcate them about the world out there, even though I tell them that, no, enjoy your childhood. But I try to teach them that what they're teaching you at school, it's nothing compared to what you are going to learn in the outside world. So that's it. I think it's mainly wasted years. Yes, it's mainly wasted years. That's why I am so angry also with our education system.
Yeah.
Because we spend so many billions.
We do.
Yes.
We do.
But look at the output. Look at the type of South African that we are producing, especially those who go to public schooling, especially those of us who don't have wealth or generational wealth. So we have to start afresh.
So true.
Yeah. So that's why I'm so unhappy with our education system post 1994, because I believe that we are creating human waste.
Oh my God. One thing I love about you is that you are outspoken and you are, some would say, radical. But I just think, Jorge, you are just thinking out of the box. In fact, you're not even in the box. So, I mean, you are saying this, and this is something, Elengore, I was saying to one of the guests I had, Jorge. The guy was actually telling me, he says, I spent 4 years at varsity doing multimedia studies. They said to me, Ndwana, make sure that your portfolio is fine, and as soon as your portfolio is fine, you will get a job. And he says, that never happened. And they never said anything about start your own company, register your own company here in that 4 years that I've spent. So, and he says, why is it that they never taught me about finances in that multimedia studies? Haban ruta ka tax, haban ruta ka saver, haban ruta ka investment, haban ruta ka debt. Why didn't I learn all of these things? They are the most critical things right now. And you look at, people are in debt, people are unemployed, people are losing work, people buy fruitless things. Why didn't they teach us? So you just like evoke that emotion, school, there's something wrong there. But why do you think we have not been able to change it in 27 years?
I think it can be changed. I mean, you and I are thinking alike in terms of what needs to happen or what might have gone wrong. I think the problem mainly is with politicians or policymakers, and the refusal to accept other people who are not inside their political space. Look, if you look at the policy direction of our country, it has not assisted the black majority in particular, who are supposed to be liberated or socially economically liberated post 1994. And if you look at the ruling party, for example, and what it envisages in terms of education, its vision of education, which is called People's Education for People's Power, you would see that it wants something different theoretically. But when you look at what it has produced, I always say that we are producing the elite of the future, meaning that on one hand, you are producing, for example, for the children of the rich, you are continuing to produce the rich of the future. But for the children of the domestic workers and gardeners, you are producing the same domestic workers and gardeners of the future who are going to be working for the children of the elite. So there's something substantially wrong with this education system, because it's a dual education system. And for me, it's not even, it goes beyond the policymakers. It's the capitalist aspect of our system. Because what it has also done, it has created individuals. Let me make an example. In the country at the moment, we are having an electricity crisis. And what you are hearing is that, Eskom is in a crisis, so let us buy solar. And even our own government is encouraging us to buy solar. And there are people who are now saying, we are buying solar, and they've also bought solar. But in the process of the government saying that, and the people admitting that, well, those who can afford that they've bought solar, I can afford solar. They're not talking about a person in Dobsonville, a person in Diepsloot, Zandspruit, Koffimvaba, Ntwelitsoku, and all the other areas where people cannot afford. Everyone is talking about themselves, whether they've got access to electricity. So it's the same with public education vis-a-vis private education. Those who have do not care whether a typical black child is being given quality education. No one cares, as long as their children are taken care of. The same with public health. So we have been individualized to an extent that whether the policy is qualitative, or the education policy or the public policy is qualitative, we have become so individualized that the only people that we care about is ourselves, me and you.
It's true. Where did that all start? Because I mean, we come from that culture of no tlaya, hana dijo, come let me help you. We even have sayings like it takes a village to raise a child. But something Jeka 1994 and after, we started becoming more individualistic, we started becoming more about material stuff. Where did it all go wrong?
Well, I think, unfortunately, we gained political power, but not economic power. And in the process, I mean, if you look at the nationalist government, they were more socialist in approach. And they, for themselves, yes. Yeah. And they were also conservative. Meaning that, for example, if you know Scope, there was this magazine called Scope.
I remember.
You would never see the tits of a white woman.
It would be stars.
There would be stars. So there would be very, very conservative, but they would ensure that everyone eats. And they were very corrupt. But in the process of stealing, of exploiting, of oppressing, there are people consciously they were taken care of. There was the Dutch Reformed Church, which was taking care of them spiritually. Economically, they had the state. And then in terms of their identity, they had SABC. So everything was...
And that the Afrikaner Buddha bond.
The Buddha bond, and they had the banks when they needed the money. So they had a social system which worked for them. Then they had the SOEs, they had the electricity, which was for the common good, meaning that Eskom at the time did not make a profit. Its mandate was to ensure that there was electricity. Transnet was to ensure that there was rail and transportation. So you had all the systems which worked in harmony, and it worked on behalf of the common good. Now comes the ANC into power. When the ANC comes into power, because the power is negotiated, there are limitations to the power. And some of the limitations, or the most fundamental limitation, is that we'll give you civil rights. Meaning that you can go and stay in the suburbs. You can marry a white woman or a white man. Your children can go study in a white school. You can speak English. You can do blonde hair. You can have blonde hair. You can look like a Mrs., but you won't have economic freedom. So that's what has been happening ever since. And what they equally did is they gave our leaders these positions, shares, So, and in the process, our leaders, and many of them have forgotten who they are.
Became elites.
They became elites that when you hear them, when they speak today, they mainly speak, for example, they'll speak of corruption, or they'll speak of a Zuma corruption, but they won't speak of social ills. They won't speak of the fact that men are being left behind. That since 1994, our democracy has, in fact, discriminated against black men in particular. That boy children are being left behind. That black men are depressed, they're unemployed, they cannot provide because we see them as providers.
Or in jail.
Or in their majority, obviously. So they don't talk about those things. They're not talking about the fact that there's this amount of what we call gender-based violence, which in effect, if others, they speak about it, they don't speak about cause and effect. That if you've got inequality and so much poverty, there cannot be prosperity, there cannot be happiness, that people will kill, they'll abuse each other within that state. So they're not talking about those things, they're talking about things which affect them. So when, for example, someone says economic freedom, for them it's a swear word. Because why must another black person eat? They've eaten, they eat on behalf of black people. So whether a black person has food, it doesn't matter. And I think for me, what irritates me more than anything is that black males have fallen victim of ANC men and politicians, even in the EFF and other political parties, who eat on their behalf. So all of them, they speak about gender all the time. But for them, they are beneficiaries. Yes. So they are beneficiaries of a system which excludes black men. And in the process, black men can take care of their household. So we are having so many things that are wrong. And for me, I think we need to go back to basics. But more importantly, I think we need to remove our liberators. People who call themselves our liberators. Mainly, they're in their 60s, their 70s. Some will be 80 next year. Your Thabo Mbeki, if he's not 80, or Jacob Zuma. All of them, Kgalema Motlanthe is younger. All of them, they must go retire because they've done their part, but they have not assisted us.
So are you saying they dropped the ball along the way somewhere? Because you're saying they came to the table, they were given the bread, and they forgot about the rest of the other people. And is it because, is it new money? What is it? Because it just boggles my mind, because I often think of how far we could have been as a state. And as you say these things about a black man, it just gives me the goosebumps. And I think of poverty, young men sitting go strateng, who can't relate to our politicians, hababua, according to they're not even interested. They're not even coming out to come and vote. I mean, what do you think happened?
I think not to also blame them. I think it's also being in prison, being away from home. There's this author, Naomi Klein. There's a book, one of her books. It's called Disaster Capitalism, the shock doctrine, disaster capitalism. How she explains how capitalists actually work and how they make people docile. That by putting you in prison, they actually destroy you. They numb you. So most of our leaders, they were numbed. I mean, imagine all of them, they were radical, they were revolutionaries, then they're just put in the cells. And for years, they're indoctrinated. And then eventually they're told that, well, we are going to negotiate and we're going to give you power. So these are people who did not have any luxury to negotiate. And they were tired, most of them. I mean, when you calculate the time that they were in prison and when they came out of prison, they were relatively old. So I don't necessarily blame them. They played an instrumental part in our liberation. But also in that process, you must also understand that most of them were funded by the same oppressors. If you look at the Oppenheimer family, the Oppenheimer family since the 50s, they funded almost all our leaders from different fields. In the cultural field, I mean, your Miriam Makebas, your Huma Sikelas, and your King Kong, for example, as a theatrical. It was funded by the Oppenheimers. The lawyers that represented most of our leaders that went to Robben Island, they were funded by the Oppenheimers, your Menel family, all the Jewish landlords who were exploiting our mineral wealth. So when the white men started fighting amongst themselves, and those who control the economy, they wanted a different partner. They could see that these Afrikaners were not complying. So they started to plan. So you've had that situation in the country where those who control the means of production, they are able to plan ahead. We are stuck in what Paulo Freire calls the tyranny of the moment. We are thinking about now. I mean, if in your bank account now, you've got 200 rand, or a typical middle class, they've got 2,000 rand. You don't have any savings. The only thing that you can only think about is today. So even with our leaders, they've made their millions. They were in jail. They just feel like they've played their part. And now in the process, they've collaborated with the same oppressors who want to keep us where we are. But worse off, they want to see us drunk, because that's the society that they are creating, a drunk society, which if there's a war tomorrow, most of us will be stuck here. We can't go anywhere. We can't move. We don't have passports. We don't even have money. So that is the society that has been created. If you look at the company that produces alcohol, it's owned by Rupert, the Rupert family. And, I was reading and I was going through some of the pamphlets that were produced by the ANC, the 40s and the 50s, and in particular by Dr. A.B. Xuma, who wrote about beer halls, who wrote about alcohol and the implications of alcohol. And now our own leaders are the ones who are selling us liquor that destroys families. If you go to most police stations every Sunday, when they read out the stats, the people who are mainly there, who came there in terms of court cases, or even if you were to go to hospitals, it's many people who were drunk. So we are a drunken nation.
Yes.
So unfortunately, it's incumbent upon ourselves to liberate ourselves, because no one else is going to liberate us. And I don't even think that our leaders who are in the 50s or late 40s, if you look at Fikile Mbalula, I don't think they've got capacity to liberate us. When was the last time that Fikile was in a taxi? He doesn't understand what you're talking about, the challenges that our people are faced with. He doesn't understand. So we need ourselves to liberate ourselves.
When you say we, are you saying young people?
Well, I'm not that young anymore, but I consider myself young.
Yeah. But younger generation needs to stand together.
Yes, the post-1994 generation. You see, normally it's always said that it's mainly youth who can revolt or who can create change. Because young people, normally you find that they do not have any obligations. But your modern day typical young person in South Africa has too many challenges, has too many problems. They don't have food, they don't have water. So how do they revolt? They're tired. So maybe amongst ourselves, I mean, some of us, we have tried, but also you need money, you need to reach out to people. There's so many things that that needs to be done, but it's only ourselves who can liberate ourselves. No one else is going to liberate us. And I always say I'm prepared to take my wig and throw it down there so that all of us, because, if, Sipho, you accumulate, you become so successful that you don't need anything else. You are leaving people behind that might come into your house and shoot you.
It's true.
So we've got a serious problem. So all of us, we need to take all of us along. This journey of ours. It's not only my journey or your journey. It's a collective journey, because the people that we have left behind are the ones who are going to eat us eventually.
It's so true. The poorest of the poor are waiting to revolt. There's a bubble that's going to just burst. And I always said it, Kere, because now I'm passionate about young people, and I've been developing young people for the last 10, 15 years. And one thing I've always said, and I've said it to my peers, Kere, the more Machita don't take care of the younger generation, the younger generation are going to be the ones who are tsarampo. And then they're going to look at us and say, hey, and come and rob us and shoot us. And that's what we are actually seeing, because these young people, they feel like the older generation, my generation, and the guys older than me, we're not going back to hold their hand and help them up. In fact, we come and show off our cars, our success, our nice things. We drink, we buy them alcohol, and yet we're not taking them along with us. So there is a revolt that is going to happen. I mean, we saw it got the unrest when people were just going into the stores and just taking things. Hey.
And what happened in Dobsonville, those are apolitical people. Those people don't know politics. The ones that I know, they don't know what was happening with Jacob Zuma.
No,
they
it
just
was not about that.
Yes, these are people who were hungry. But over and above that, these were people who just don't care. They're just waiting for that, that spark.
And then they're ready to go.
They're ready to go. And what I've done, interestingly, on what you are raising, I mean, I wrote to the president, to the office of the president, about the issue of black men.
Which president?
The current one, Cyril Ramaphosa. Yes, I wrote to the president, and I've written extensively. I even started my NGO specifically to focus on black males. And initially, I had called my program or the project Indoda Khali. And then I sent it to the ANC Women's League. I sent it to everyone. And people don't take me serious, And I've seen now there's been a slight change. People are talking about poor children. People are talking about men. I mean, but the way that it's being done, it's not addressing the challenges of black males. For example, you'll hear our leaders saying that black men must not abuse. So it's like, don't be part of the problem.
Yeah.
But society is a problem, your environment is a problem. So no one is addressing the fact that your gender empowerment policies are anti-black men. No one addresses the fact that when a black man reaches 35 years old, the system kicks him out. It says that you are not youth, you are not female. Hamba yos pandel. So you've got those limitations, and you would think that our leaders who come from the township would understand. You would think that the ANC Women's League, who are mothers, would understand. They raise these boy children. You would think that they understand. But when they go out there, they say something else. You'd think that women themselves would understand. The same women who say, Amadota, yizinja. The women who call women trash, and it's mainly black women.
Yeah.
You would think that we would understand because we come from the same environment as this black man.
It's our brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
Our brothers and children.
You know, so you would think it's our children more than anything. It's our children because before they even become brothers, before they even become delinquents who beat up their girlfriends, these are our children that we raise. But when we are old, when we want positions, when we go out there and protest, we forget that how. But we raised these delinquents. And we are raising these boys that we are talking about 50%. But what about our children? What must happen to them? You are only lucky if you are a politician, a female politician, because your own child will not be faced by the challenges that a typical or ordinary black man will be faced with. And when we speak about, for example, when we speak about women empowerment, it includes white women. We forget that white women are beneficiaries of the system, including during apartheid and colonialism. Yet we treat black males as if they benefited from the previous system. So, I mean, how is a person, I mean, if you listen to Miriam Makeba singing Gauteng and all these songs, and you hear that, and even Huma Sikela, they were singing about the pain of a man who would have left the rural areas to come and look for work, that you are talking about a traumatized, gender, but no one cares. Yet we expect prosperity, we expect that there will be harmony and hegemony in society. So there's something wrong with us and how we think.
It's so true. But now, my worry, Gore, we've just come out of the provincial conference here, ANC, the regional conference here, Johannesburg, KZN is going to its conference. What is it that they are discussing there? Like, is there any value out of... Because you've written to the president, you've written your opinions. I've seen on social media you're passionate about the black man and the policy directions of the country. But comrades go to conferences and they come out with nothing but maybe brown envelopes, some cash here and there. Why is it that it's not being addressed there?
Well, some of the issues, or many of the issues, are being addressed. I mean, I was a delegate to the regional conference that you are talking about.
Yeah.
I was a scribe at the provincial conference. Unfortunately, there's so many things that have gone wrong because even delegates themselves, beyond the leaders who are contesting, they care more about electing people more than the policies. I mean, I was a scribe for the Commission of Peace and Stability. And Peace and Stability, they talk about crimes and so forth.
GBV.
Yes. I mean, we were less than 40 in our commission.
Jesus.
In a conference that had more than 1,000 delegates. And when you would go outside, the delegates were outside drinking. And they were singing about their respective leaders. And these are people who are going back to their community to face the challenges that we are talking about.
Yes.
But when they are there and they are consumed by this
Factional.
I would not even, I don't call it factions because it's people contesting. You just decide, are you going to align with this one or this one? But whether it makes sense, it's neither here nor there. Okay. We'll discuss that.
Yeah.
But for them, it's about this leader. And they go back to their communities and they have to deal to their respective wards. They have to deal with the same challenges. So it's an unfortunate reality. I mean, I call them black pathologies.
What?
Yes. So
Okay.
you can't really blame these delegates. It's the problems that are there,
That are not solved.
Yes, problems of drugs, early pregnancy,
Alcohol abuse.
Bumamazala hating their daughters, hating their boy children. There's so many issues. I even think that maybe as black people we need to have our own CODESA of some sort because we are at a tipping point. We might speak of these problems, but these problems are mainly in the black community. They might be there in the white community, but they are not as
prevalent.
Yes, they're not as prevalent. They might be there in the Indian community, but the good thing about the Indian community is that they've got a strong they've got a strong family unit. So with us, we are in trouble.
It's so worrying because even I think at 2017 Comrade Gwede Mantashe presented the report, the diagnostic report, And in it, he clearly states, comrades don't read. They don't read policy documents ahead of the conference. There might be a few pockets of them who read and go to commissions and discuss it. And instead of being in commissions, maybe that's in 2017. And to think, we are in a province where we barely scrape through 50.1%, and that, we would take things a little bit more seriously, because a diagnostic report is like taking a car to the mechanic and then abebaofa a diagnostic fix this, fix that, fix this, fix that. We don't seem to have, and I think that's been my concern, especially when we look at the nature of where we are at the moment as a country, let alone the organization, just as a country.
It's because we don't have leadership. I mean, Gwede himself can come up with that report, but where is he? Since 2017, where has the ANC leadership been? We've got no black leadership as a black people. And unfortunately, when it comes to the ANC, when it suits them, they speak of non-racialism, but the majority of the people who vote for the ANC is mainly black people. And if you look at the primary mission and objective of the ANC is to liberate a society, in particular Africans, from poverty. So we don't have leadership. Gwede Mantashe and his family are swimming in wealth. The president and his family are swimming in wealth. The same with President Zuma. When he was in power, his children were milking it. So unfortunately, I spoke of individualism. Our leaders they're not groomed in collectivism where they have to take everyone along. They must make money. And in the process, what happens? They don't care. I mean, I'm in my branch, I'm a chairperson of the branch of the ANC. Government does not speak to us. I mean, we hear our ANC-led government doing things, but I am as blank as another person. They don't engage us. They don't even seek some advice from us because we are grounded in the community. So they've got their policies. They assume they know what we want, and they implement. And it's clear that what they've implemented for close to 30 years is not working. I mean, we are on a verge of collapse. And I don't think they even see it. They are busy there. Now we are going to the next elective conference. That's what they are busy with. That's what they,
what consumes them.
And they're going to spend millions to ensure that they retain their positions, because they know that through political power, that's how they will make money. And unfortunately, it's not only the ANC, all political parties are like that. They care more about themselves than the people. Tell me, why have we not had one single political party which has stood up against public education or public health? They can't, because they also go to all these private institutions. So political parties have failed us in the country, and we need a new type of leader, a leader who cares. 70 leaders, and they are out there. They're even there in the ANC. They just have to stand up. We just need to stop aligning ourselves to this mob psych. When two people say we must elect them, we simply do not ask questions, but we support them. But lastly, on this one, I'm glad that in Gauteng, we rallied behind Leboga Maile and this concept called Adiwele.
Yes.
People are saying it's frivolous. There's no ideology. You are talking about Nancy ama 1,000, Yafuna ama 1,000. You want money now. And for me, out of all the provinces in the country or the conferences in the country, you now have a generation which is speaking of its own material condition, correctly or incorrectly, but it's saying that we also want economic liberation, not in the future, not in our lifetime, now. So I think for me, it has created a different, in fact, it's a new thinking, it's a new consciousness within the ANC. I mean, if I look at KZN and the coming conference, they're talking about Cyril Ramaphosa, they're talking about Zuma. They're not talking about themselves as a generation.
Yeah.
They're still leaning to these old people who have done their best, but those people are dividing us. And whether you align with them or not, it does not change the material conditions on the ground. So that's why I'm saying that with what is called Adiwele, that not all the doors will be closed. If you listen to the song, it's just that I can't speak Zulu properly, but that doors must be open, doors will be open. It's a song about hope. And that's why I think, and it's sweeping the country. That's why I think that there's still hope.
I saw KZN was, they were introducing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think there's still hope within the ANC. Yes. I think there's still hope.
I'm glad you say that, because we love the ANC, and at times, have you received backlash for being so outspoken about the things you've said? Because you've said stuff, like I would sit and think, hey, I know I've said a lot of stuff, but I think it's out of pure frustration at times. You say it internally in a branch, you say it in a region, you try and speak to leaders, and you end up going to social media because you've written to the public, on media, you've said some really strong things. Have you been, disciplined? Have you been reprimanded for some of the things you've said?
Sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes I listen, but I think I'm an eternal anarchist. So I'll be sitting there, and as I'm sitting, I get some statistics that unemployment is so high, that poverty, that we are the most unequal country in the world. How can you become comfortable?
Yeah.
You can't just be comfortable.
No, you can't.
Yeah, with such a state. So for me, it's not even about myself. For me, I think I'm trying to just speak to somebody's consciousness that, wait, as much as we are here, as much as, the ANC is in charge, but there's something wrong out there. So I'm trying to agitate. And where I think I have assisted, or where I have achieved a bit, I think for me, it's not even about being disciplined or not being disciplined, but making our leaders to be aware of what is happening. They're not aware. Yeah, they're not aware. Where they are in, when they're in Cape Town, when they travel, wherever they are in their state houses, they're not aware of what's happening out there. Yes. So that's what I'm trying to do, to just agitate that, but something is going wrong out there, and you're not listening. And sometimes you don't listen when you are in a blue light.
You don't.
Yeah,
because it consumes you.
Yeah, you've got bodyguards. You've got bodyguards. You don't pay for your own house. So you don't know what is happening out there. So we must continue to agitate and try to speak, maybe to their conscience, that at some point they'll be able to listen. How does the president listen? The president can't listen. The president has got billions. So you are appealing to a capitalist to listen to a condition which he does not understand. So unfortunately, that's what we are faced with.
What's the worst way that you were reprimanded for things you've said? Have you been told, take that post down? Yeah,
sometimes, people try to buy you with money as well.
Okay.
So that they silence you.
Oh.
Yes. And sometimes you are told that you can be suspended. Especially when I used to support President Zuma.
I remember when you used to support him.
Yeah, it was the most difficult period, because this is one man during Nkandla. I even wrote a letter that he must step down.
Yes.
So you have Nkandla, and then you've got all these leaders who are now ministers under the president, who were supporting him, calling swimming pools, fire pools, and so forth. So, I wrote a letter. I was told to withdraw the letter. I withdrew the letter. And after then, the president, the former president, in fact, towards Nasrek, that's when I started to support him. And the reason why I supported him, and with all the noise, with all the people who were telling me to stop, it's because I thought that he was saying the right things.
Yeah.
At the time, I thought that he was really saying the right things, because I understood, I'm a researcher, I understood that the economy is in the hands of white people.
The radical economic transformation.
Yes, I understood that even with our own leaders who are in the ANC, they're given breadcrumbs. They don't control anything. That's why they can be bought. That's why when some old white man who benefited from apartheid, when that person says that, no, you can't remove such a minister, that leader will listen to that white man. So that's when I started sympathizing with President Zuma, not because he was a saint, but because I felt that at that particular time he was being, in fact, also being made a sacrificial lamb for an organization which has now bowed down to the aspirations of domestic capital and international capital. So that's why I identified with him. That's why I fiercely fought hard for him, including Nkosazana Zuma. But now I've realized that, well, there's a new generational mission which goes beyond them, because they are old, they are spent, they've played their part. They're not going to save us. We need to save ourselves. Yeah.
Sure. I know I need to release you. Just the last parting shot. Just your last thought on predictions. Who do you think is going to take KZN? Because it's coming up. And I know you've got interest in KZN. Or not really. You don't?
I do.
Okay.
I do.
Because I saw you.
Yeah,
There's a candidate you are pushing. She's female. So your predictions on KZN this weekend, who do you think will emerge as maybe the chair?
Well, I think it's a little bit complicated with KZN. In fact, this morning I actually felt bad for Sihle Zikalal. And I felt bad for the people of KZN, the people, the members of the ANC in KZN, that their politics, as I said, it's not about ideas. It's about whether a person, a leader, is seen to support President Zuma, or a leader is seen to be supporting President Ramaphosa. So I'm supporting Nomusa, mainly because she's not part of, she's not in the status quo. But whoever wins, for me, it means nothing for the people of KZN. The economy there is still in the hands of white people and Indians, unfortunately. And the leaders are not saying anything new. And I'm hoping that whoever wins, I hope that Nomusa will win, as I said. But whether any of them will be able to change the lives of the people is something else. The people in KZN, the majority of the people, that province is called KwaZulu-Natal. KwaZulu. But the Zulu people are not in charge of their own economy. They're not in charge of their. I've got a lot of Indian friends, a lot of them who are progressive, but we must also tell them that it's not right that you control the economy and the majority do not. They're still scrapping. It's not right. So whoever wins, for me, it's neither here nor there, to tell you the honest truth, because nothing has changed. You still have your reddies, you still have your governors and others who are in charge. It's painful. As a black person, it's painful that you vote for an organization which says that it's going to change your lives, that it's going to change the economy, that it's going to transform the economy. But nothing changes. You are supposed to celebrate RDP houses. You're supposed to celebrate the fact that you are given social grants. Yet millions are being given to the minorities.
And then conference here nationally, do you think the President Ramaphosa is going to make it until December and run?
The president is in trouble.
Big trouble.
The president is in trouble. If it were me, the entire NEC would just step down. Because beyond conference, I don't see the ANC coming back into power 2024. And I don't think the leaders who are there have the tools or the know-how in terms of what must change. So I sometimes I want to sympathize with the president. I actually want to. I try to tap into his head. But I don't actually know. I feel that the president must not come back. Mainly because the president is too embedded there are many white people who've got expectations from the president. And I also feel sorry for him because he can do as much. So I think this conference is going to be what do they a watershed, the real watershed conference. If it were me, we would not have a leader who's over 65, who's going to become the next president of the ANC. That's my view. But whoever is elected, I'm sure that we are going to support them. But whoever is elected, I don't see them coming back and ensuring that the ANC wins, gets a majority in 2024.
It's deep.
It's too deep. And for them, I mean, they've got things that they can fall back on.
Yeah.
We've got nothing. We've always been in
nothing.
we've always been in the ANC since we were children. So we've got nothing besides the ANC. And we have seen what happens when the ANC is not in control of power. When it's the opposition, which is...
We've lost so much and almost everything.
Yes. So let's pray. And now my prayer is that our old pensioners in the ANC, they go back and take care of their children and their wives. I'm sure that their wives are missing them. I'm sure that their husbands are missing them. These are people who have been in politics since the 70s.
True.
Some of them, the 60s. When are they going to relax and just be, in conversations with themselves? Not in fear of whether someone else is going to remove them. Let them just enjoy what's left of their lives.
It's so true. My goodness. I could speak to you for another hour, but I know you need to go. And I really want to appreciate you for coming. And I want to applaud you. And I think I'm glad I spoke to you because you don't mince your words and you really want the good for this country. And now I really appreciate people who want the best for this country. I'm tired of people who just think about me, fella. Because we've been surrounded by me. And being a man in the ANC, it's so difficult as well when you see comrades who have money and they want to flaunt it to your face and want to belittle you because they've got money. And then they make you want to feel they are more successful than you because they've got money. Can't they, they got it in their own dubious ways. And even worse, they don't even go back to help. When I look at the program, when I was a branch chair, you would know. Your branch doesn't have money. And for programs. And if we check some of the branches in other areas, at least when you're in a nicer area, some branches, they are in the direst areas. And they don't even have money for door-to-door, let alone money for buying material for buy the street sheets. Havana pen le pampiri or but information as they do door to door. And it's like it's one of the most painful things to see, and I'm glad there are people like yourself who shine the light, who say, no, this is wrong, even against all odds. So I appreciate you for always being bold, and I'm glad God has kept you, because I know they get silenced very quickly. I've been told to shut up a few times because I think I have also just said things that upset people. And I think we need to continue to push against all odds because South Africa is going to go even worse. And what they don't realize, when coalitions happen, worse things happen. White people rise to the top. The minority will guide and run us. And things can only become worse from there for all of us, And we see it more Johannesburg. So I want to thank you for your time. I really appreciate you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. By the way, before I finish, it's not only men, it's also women. You've seen it. When women get access to wealth, when women get access to property, they also become like men.
Yeah.
So it's mainly the system, but let like-minded people come together. Let's not mourn, let's mobilize.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know what, just last one parting one. A friend of mine once said, Are, what became of us as a nation was we used to watch the white man beating us, ilibas, o ile bona ga go epiwa mokoti mo, the white man is like, hey, you know, and the white man sits there, and we used to be thinking, or hey, le nna o ka re one day nka ipona ke le lekgowa ke le lengamla.
Oh, like me, like me. Yes.
Or, hey, o ka re nka ipona ke le lengamla one day. O ka re, and then we became it. We became the very oppressor we hated. And you can see it, local government, home affairs, department thing. We have become the very oppressor that we hated, and it's such a sad. I think your most powerful close was to say, let's not mourn, let's mobilize.
Yeah.
Let's let like-minded people to come together. So, Os, thank you so
No, it's my
much.
pleasure. Thank you
Yeah.
so much,
I
and
appreciate
thank you
you,
for
man.
hosting me.
Absolutely. All right. So we're signing off. Thank you very much for watching. We really appreciate you. Continue to share the program. This program, the Free Ride podcast, is about people who are like-minded, people who think differently. This is not a popularity contest. It's not a podcast that speak about celebrities, that speak about gossip, that speak about other people. We really just want to build the country. We want people who are like-minded to share their stories, to empower other people. Os Phapano Atlileso has empowered so many of you, and I'm sure you can take your story, her story, and say, wait again, that woman is pushing, she speaks something that I really want to be, and she's empowered me today, and this is what this show is about. So we out. Boom.
Okay.
Thank you.